The Minnesota Twins picked up their 2025 season where they left off in 2024, unfortunately, with ugly, lifeless, losing baseball. An opening sweep in St. Louis served to set a gloomy tone for this new season, giving skeptical fans little reason to believe off the bat. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Twins Daily Week in Review podcast, our first episode of this new 2025 season. We'll be recapping a short first week of the season, the Twins' opening series in St. Louis against the Cardinals. Not a very good one, but we'll go through it and cover everything you need to know here as we get rolling. Just to get you up to speed on what we do here in case you're new. My name is Nick Nelson. I'm one of the co-founders of Twins Daily and a frequent writer at twinsdaily.com. On the site every Sunday evening, I publish a story called The Week in Review, which is a recap of the past 7 days of Twins baseball. Just letting you know everything basically you need to know if you haven't been following closely. The highlights, the high points, the lowlights, the news and notes, roster updates, injuries, that kind of thing. Zero in on a trending storyline every week that we think people should be focusing on, and then let you know what's coming up next. So this is pretty much just restating the content that you're going to find in the written article on the site. Sometimes here on the podcast, I'll riff a little bit more or go off and go a little more deep into some of this stuff, but generally just giving you the same content in an audio format, about a 20-minute episode, if that's how you prefer to consume it. So we hope you'll stick with us this season. Subscribe to our podcast channels wherever you prefer to listen, and we'll be bringing this show every Sunday night or Monday morning throughout the season. With that, let's get into our first breakdown of the season. This is your weekly snapshot for Thursday, March 27th through Sunday, March 30th. The Twins going 0-3 in their first series of the season, swept by the Cardinals in St. Louis. Their run differential in this series, -13. They were outscored by 13 runs by St. Louis, and the Twins find themselves here very early on tied for last place in the AL Central with the Detroit Tigers, who are also off to an 0-3 start. A quick look at the game results from last week in the season opener on Thursday. Following a bit of a rain delay, the Twins were defeated 5-3 by the Cardinals. Pablo Lopez getting the ball for that opener once again and looking rather unsharp. And the offense stifled by our old friend Sonny Gray. Game 2 on Saturday, the Twins were defeated 5-1. The lineup unable to find a spark in that one, and the bullpen ran into some struggles. The Twins 1 through 3 hitters going 0 for 12 in that game, and really just having a rough series overall, as we'll get into. And then in the third game on Sunday, the Cardinals won 9-2 in a blowout. Bailey Ober, very shaky in that game, gets obliterated as the Cards are able to complete the sweep. The news and notes here for the first week of the season, really just kind of a few tidbits to cover coming into the season. The Twins opened with 4 players on the injured list: Royce Lewis, who has a hamstring injury; Brooks Lee, who is dealing with back issues; Michael Tonkin, who's got a sore shoulder; and Brock Stewart, who also was dealing with a hamstring strain. All these injuries occurring over the course of spring training, which is unfortunate. No specific timelines, I don't think, on any of these guys quite yet, but presumably we should get some updates when the team returns home on Thursday for their first series at Target Field. We open up with some highlights and some of the bright spots of the past week. Not really too many. The most positive thing you can say, I think, about this opening series in St. Louis is that, at least on Thursday and Saturday, the Twins did not look as bad as the results indicate in this rather lopsided series. There were plenty of good at-bats, plenty of quality pitches thrown by the Twins in those games. One of those series where the ball just always seemed to find grass for the opponent and never for the good guys. The Cardinals also, to their credit, I think played exceptionally well. They repeatedly made a lot of big plays in the field defensively, came up clutch at the plate. Some good at-bats in really key moments for them. So credit to the Cardinals for getting their season off to a good start. But in terms of actual performance and output for Twins players, there weren't many high points over these 3 games. One of the few was Trevor Larnach, who appears ready to build on last year's success in his new apparent fixed role as cleanup hitter. He batted 4th in all 3 games. The biggest factor in Larnach's 2024 breakthrough for the Twins was a drastic reduction in strikeout rate. He showed really a better ability to fight off breaking balls and to go the other way with pitches. And I think we saw that in this series. These adaptations were on display. He went 3 for 10 with a couple nice opposite field hits, had a walk and just 2 strikeouts. So like what I'm seeing from Trevor Larnach, as well as newcomer and fellow left fielder Harrison Bader, who made a nice first impression on opening day against his old team. Went 2 for 4 with a double and a 2-run homer against the Cardinals, who originally drafted him. That one swing, that home run, accounted for a full third of Minnesota's total run production in the series. So credit to Bader for making his presence felt. He started twice in left field against the Cardinals, pushing Larnach to DH, which was interesting to see, and we'll touch on that a little bit later. Willie Castro, the star of the series really for the Twins, fresh off being named their 2024 MVP at the Diamond Awards. He really looked the part. Biggest standout in the lineup for sure in these games. He started all 3 at second base and flashed some serious pop. He had 4 hits and they all went for extra bases, 3 doubles, and he got a hold of a hanging breaking ball and took it yard for a home run. So that's very welcome to see, because last year Castro's power really vanished in the second half. He slugged .420 ahead of the All-Star break, making the All-Star team, of course, and then just slugged .329 the rest of the way. So getting a little power back from him, especially if he's going to be at the bottom of the lineup, maybe adding a little depth to the Twins' batting order, that'll be good. That'll be helpful towards turning things around here. But that's really all there is to cover for the most part from a highlights standpoint. So let's turn our attention to what did not go so well, the lowlights of this opening series for the Twins. The offense, as I mentioned, picked up where it left off following last year's season-ending collapse. The Twins scored just 6 runs on 16 hits in 27 innings against the Cardinals, with far too many prolonged stretches of silence, if that sounds familiar. And yeah, there were some good at-bats here and there for the Twins, but also a lot of really poor ones. It just felt like a continuation of what we saw last September. Hitters were going to the plate without much of an evident plan. They were failing to make adjustments over the course of the game. It seemed like things would just sort of get worse and worse as opposed to figuring things out against these pitchers, and just falling into a lot of bad habits, chasing, a lot of things that you don't like to see from an underlying standpoint, which make it a little hard to pass off all this is just bad luck, which it was to some extent. But the shortcomings for this offense really starting at the top of the lineup. Their number 1 through 3 hitters, Wallner, Correa, and Buxton, went a combined 2 for 34 in the series, which makes it almost impossible for the offense to catalyze when that's what the top of your order is doing. This total lack of production, just a major drain on a unit that could not muster a fruitful rally all weekend. The Twins posted just 1 crooked number in the entire series. That was when they got 2 on Bader's 2-run homer in the 5th inning of the opener. Otherwise, they were scarcely able to generate any kind of threat, and they could not capitalize when they did. The Twins went just 3 for 20 with runners in scoring position, which, again, just sort of a uncomfortable throwback to last year. The lineup struggles are what they are. It was discouraging to see, but it's 3 games. And run scoring, I think, was not necessarily expected to be this team's calling card. Really, that was supposed to be the pitching staff that was going to be the signature strength on this roster, specifically with kind of 5 guys leading the way, 5 established standout veterans who all really have the potential to be all-stars and elite players. And I think that's one of the reasons I was feeling confident about this team's floor. Namely, I'm speaking of talking about the top 3 starters and their top 2 relievers. Pablo Lopez, Joe Ryan, Bailey Ober, Joan Duran, and Griffin Jax. And I think what most concerned me about this opening weekend, to the extent that you're going to be concerned about 3 games, is that none of these guys, with the exception of Joe Ryan, looked much good at all. Lopez pitched on opening day, really struggled both with executing his pitches and executing plays defensively on the mound. Looked just very uncharacteristically sloppy. He gave up 8 hits in 5 innings and committed a costly balk and throwing error on the way to an 0-1 record to start his season. I would say at least his velocity and stuff looked relatively intact, no big concerns from that point. And he was in the zone, He did get sort of nicked up a little bit on hits, so not super concerning there. I think a little more concerning is what we saw from Bailey Ober, who once again for a second straight year delivered an absolute dud in his first start. We saw this against Kansas City at the beginning of last year as well. And in that case, didn't turn out to be too bad. He turned things around quick and had a really great year. I would say, to my eye, this was a more worrisome performance than what we saw from Ober against the Royals last year, though. There was a sense, and I think Rocco Baldelli intimated this after that start, that maybe the Royals had something on him, as it was put, as if, maybe he was tipping something a little bit, or they had something scouted on him and really came in ready to jump on him. I thought that, he was throwing decent stuff, as I recall, in that outing, and the Royals were just jumping on it. In this game against the Cardinals on Sunday, Bailey Ober just had really underwhelming stuff and brutal command, to my eyes, coming off a spring where his velocity was noticeably down. And that's a big contrast, because usually his velocity is up in the spring. I know this is something that was talked a lot about by reporters down there and some of our Twins Daily writers. So a rough outing for Bailey Ober. He didn't even get through 3 innings. He got through 2 2/3, gave up 8 runs, 8 all earned, 2 homers. Those were 2 3-run homers, and both came on just straight up meatballs hung out right over the plate. You don't need to really have something on a guy in order to crush those kinds of pitches. Hopefully, Ober can just flush this one and get back on track like we saw in 2024. At least he has set that precedent. And for what it's worth, Rocco did mention after the game that Ober has been dealing with a virus leading up to the start, so perhaps that was also potentially a factor. We'll have to hope he can bounce back. On the relief front, Griffin Jax, who allowed just 4 home runs all of last season, was one of the best relievers in baseball, gave up a homer to the second batter he faced in 2025. Nolan Arenado taking Jax deep to pad a 1-run lead in the 8th inning of that season opener on Thursday. Outside of that pitch, and it wasn't even necessarily a terrible pitch, good piece of hitting by Arenado, I thought Jax looked fine. A little more alarmed by what we saw from Joan Duran. He entered with a deficit on Saturday to get some work in, and he got worked. Like Ober, Duran showed diminished velocity in camp, which is something that was raising some flags. He had a little bit of it back in this first regular season outing on Saturday, touched 101 a couple times, still not showing that 103, 104 velocity from his prime, and increasingly it looks like that's just not there anymore. And he also really just struggled with his command in this first outing. Through just 13 of 24 pitches for strikes, he allowed the first 3 batters he faced to reach, 2 of them on walks, and he got pulled from the game with just 1 out recorded. So I'm not going to say a disastrous first outing for Joan Duran, but a really underwhelming one to be sure. Look, all these guys I'm talking about have made 1 appearance apiece, so there's no reason for any kind of dramatic extrapolations based on what we've seen. But the bottom line is that these 5 pitchers represent the biggest reason to believe in the 2025 Twins, from my view. And aside from Joe Ryan, who pitched quite well on Saturday, they've all started their seasons on the wrong foot. Let's turn to our trending storyline. This is kind of what I'm focusing on here as we turn our attention to a new week starting on Monday. The big question, I think, coming out of that series is, how are the Twins going to get their offense going? You don't want to overreact to a 3-game sample here in the first series, but at the same time, it's difficult to have a lot of patience after what we saw from this offense, which is largely unchanged, at the end of last year. There are, I think, a few small and straightforward adjustments that could help maybe give the lineup a jump start without needing to, shake up the roster or anything at this early stage. But the first and simplest, from my view, would be getting Edouard Julien into the lineup against right-handers. Potentially maybe at second base with Castro moving over to third and Jose Miranda moving to the bench. It is clear to me that the Twins do not have a great deal of faith in Miranda's bat, based on the fact that he's batting 8th in the lineup in all these games. That's quite striking to me. And I think that lack of faith has been justified based on what we've seen so far. Much like in the second half of last year when he really slumped, Miranda's just putting forth really low quality at-bats, characterized by the same over-aggressiveness and persistently weak contact that defined that slump throughout the second half of 2024 when he did not hit a single home run after the All-Star break. You've got to think Julien is a better option against right-handed pitching, because if not, why is he on the roster? Julien made 0 plate appearances in the opening series. He came in as a late-game sub blowout loss on Sunday. But pretty telling to me that he was not able to get in a bat with 3 right-handed starters on the mound for St. Louis. The other opportunity that sticks out to me is steering away from using Harrison Bader against right-handed pitchers. His strong performance on opening day notwithstanding, this is just not a good idea if the objective is to maximize run scoring. Bader has a .672 career OPS against righties, yet he, as I mentioned, drew 2 starts in this series, both against right-handers. I think in each of those cases, that's an understandable kind of decision for Baldelli and the Twins. They want to showcase their biggest offseason acquisition on opening day. They want to give a nod to the veteran player that they signed for $6 million during the offseason. And on Sunday, they were facing a pitcher named Andre Palante, who, while he is right-handed, he has really extreme reverse splits in his career. He's been much better against left-handers. So, I can get the inclination to go with a righty and get Bader's defense out there. But if this becomes a habit, while the offense continues to sputter, I think it's going to become a point of contention. Again, I recognize the value of having Bader's glove out there in the outfield alongside Buxton, but putting him into your starting lineup against a right-hander means you're sacrificing the ability to use one of those bat-first lefty guys like they have in Edward Julian or Mickey Gasper, who's a switch hitter. So I'm going to be keeping a close eye on that. It's a little concerning to me that Burt Bader would be playing really frequently against right-handers and not the kind of thing that's going to get the offense going most likely. So we'll be watching that. With that all said, let's take a look ahead to what's on tap here in the first full week of the Twins season. They got to get going. This season has started in exactly the opposite of the way the Twins need it to, I would say, as a franchise. They are already clearly having a hard time igniting fan interest, which unfortunately I think will be reflected by the crowd size and energy at Thursday's home opener. I'll be there. I'll be excited, but not getting the sense that they're really having an easy time selling tickets and filling that up. So we'll see. I think with what's going on with ownership, what happened this offseason, some of the frustrations around this TV situation, which was a big mess on opening day. The Twins need their players to go out there and capture people's imagination and get some engagement from the sports fans locally here. They cannot afford to dig a deep early hole. The Twins have got to get going, and they need to do it in a hurry. So the good news on that front is that a 3-game showdown against the lowly White Sox lies ahead in Chicago for their next series. So that should provide an opportunity to regain a little composure coming off this sweep before the Twins return to Target Field for their home opening series against the Houston Astros, which is a solidly good opponent. It's not exactly the Astros I don't think of yesteryear, but you're going to have to bring your game to beat the Houston Astros. That's always true. So big week ahead to see if the Twins can rebound and get on track and kind of put some of the negativity of this opening series behind them. A quick look at the pitching matchups as they are scheduled. These are subject to change, but this is what's mapped out here at the moment as we look ahead on Sunday. Monday in Chicago, the Twins will be throwing Chris Paddock for his first start of the season against our old friend Martin Perez, who was one of the White Sox's pickups during the offseason. That'll be an interesting game, I think, both to see how Paddock looks. I think he's a big wild card in this rotation and on this pitching staff. And also, this will be the first time the Twins are facing a lefty starter this season, so we'll see how Baldelli builds his lineup for that game. On Tuesday, against the White Sox, it'll be Simeon Woods-Richardson making his first start of the season against Shane Smith, a right-hander for the Sox. And on Wednesday, to close out that series, it's going to be Pablo Lopez going against Sean Burke of the White Sox. Twins return home on Thursday for the home opener against the Astros. That'll be Hunter Brown, a righty, going for the Astros, versus Joe Ryan of the Twins. On Saturday, Bailey Ober will be looking to rebound from his very rough first start against Spencer Arrighetti. And on Sunday, it'll be Ronel Blanco for the Astros going against Chris Paddock, who is scheduled to start twice next week for the Twins. So a short first week for the Twins, just 3 games in the book. Hard to imagine it could have gone too much worse, but it is only 3 games. We're very early in the season here. And, the last time the Twins started 0-3, ominously, was 2016, and that ended up turning into 0-9 and 100-plus losses. So, that's hard not to think back to that with just knowing that was the last time they started this poorly. But this is a good team. They're a lot better than they showed in the series, and hopefully we'll just start to see that in the next week. So make sure you swing by the site. We're going to have lots of good stuff here on twinsdaily.com as we fire up the start of the regular season. And make sure to check out the Week in Review column on the site where you can leave a comment, you can converse with your fellow Twins fans. Let us know what you think needs to happen in order for this team to get on track and start playing some better ball. We will be back with the podcast, I think potentially not next week because I am going to be in Kansas City, traveling there to watch the Royals series that gets underway a week from Monday. But I will have the column, so you'll be able to find it on the site. And yeah, I think most weeks, almost every week, you'll be able to find this podcast on your podcast channel. So like I said, subscribe. Feel free to reach out to @TwinsDaily or myself @NickNelsonMN on Twitter, or shoot me a comment on the article on the site and let me know if there's anything else you'd like to see or any way we can make this podcast experience better for you. But with that, we'll sign off, and a rough start to the season, but it's great to have baseball back, and it's great to be chatting to y'all again. So let's look ahead to better days and get this thing going. All right, folks, take it easy.